Good morning. Quick one today. I just don't feel like I have a ton to say except this one topic that's on my mind. So I have technically two podcasts, SaaS Experiments, Ecom Experiments. Each is about conversion optimization, A/B testing in the respective domains that they're named for. And this is a space that I've come to feel less and less enthusiastic about over the last couple months. And so, I haven't officially announced that I'm done with the podcast. There's no reason to do that. And there's nothing to stop me from doing more podcasts. I bought the domains. I've got the platform. I have a mic. You know what I mean? But neither am I actively recruiting people to appear on these episodes as I did. If you roll back 6 months, I was pinging people and saying, hey, love to have you on my podcast. Hey, want to come talk about blah, blah, blah on my podcast? And I don't do that anymore, because I'm not enthusiastic about the topic, because it feels a little trivial. Sorry, no offense. To me, it feels a little trivial to be focused on, hey, how can this ecom brand increase their add to cart ratio by 8% with this one weird trick when, there's just more stuff going on in the world that seems more important than that to me. And so I'm in this kind of trying to figure out what do I do about that, right? Talking about that might seem trivial, but what am I doing instead? I don't have an answer to that yet. I have this idea though. So here's what I love about having a podcast. When you have a podcast, you've always got something to invite somebody to. And that's more or less the whole reason I did it. I wanted to learn how to do a podcast just to see how it went, see if I liked it. I do like it. And I wanted to have something to invite people to. So as I'm on this explore crypto quest or whatever, it's occurred to me that it might be really nice to have something to invite people to, because the exciting news for me is that I have broken through what I've heard referred to as the outer crust of insufferable crypto bros and gotten closer to the core of some people who are actually working in the space, who are deep thinkers, who understand that the work that we do is connected to society at large, who aren't just in it for a quick buck. They're not scammers. They're not grifters. They're out there. When I started this, I literally didn't know if they were out there. I started this to figure out if they were out there or not. So happy to report they do exist. I've found some of them. And now I'm in this position where I think, man, if I had a podcast, then that would be a great way to reach out to these people. And even if they say no, you can always frame the ask in such a way that you give yourself permission to come back and ask again. And you can just work on it over time. So for example, I could be like, hey, I got this podcast. I love what you're saying about XYZ over here in this space. And just wondering if by any chance you'd have 45 minutes to appear and guest on an episode sometime this month. And so sometime this month is the piece where if they just say no, or even just ignore it or whatever, then I can always kind of follow up and set the expectation. Hey, you know what? No worries. Totally understood. Not a problem. If it's cool, I'll check back with you maybe next month or next year, because it's November right now. So next year is a month and a half away. And nobody cares if you say that, right? Nobody minds if you say, hey, I might reach out in a couple months. I've never had anyone say, no, don't bother. People aren't, it's just a little too mean. So what you've done there is now you got their permission and the expectation. And so when I come back, because I will, and say, hey, Happy New Year. Still doing the podcast, still love to talk to you. Do you think you might have any time this month? Now it's I've kept a promise, right? It's they didn't ask me to come back, but I said I would and I did. And now it's kind of I'm almost a known face and a person who keeps my word, and I'm persistent and I'm clearly interested, not just spamming them. And that changes people's minds. So all this to say, yeah, maybe I'd spin up a podcast about this topic, because what I've found is there's the all-in crypto maximalist crowd that loves to go on and on about whatever space they're excited about. If you want to listen to a podcast where people go on and on about how great NFTs are, they're going to change the world, that podcast exists. Excuse me. I'm really sensitive to the sound of when someone has dry mouth on the mic. I think most people don't care, but I have a weird issue with it, so I had to stop for a sip. So if you want to listen to a podcast that's all about Bitcoin, it's all Bitcoin and everything else is crap, but Bitcoin's going to change that podcast is out there. if you want to listen to somebody talk about how the whole thing is a scam, there's some content out there in that space too, for sure. Some really good content. Some of my favorite podcasts are kind of neo-Luddite in that sense. I've not found anybody who's out there taking a skeptical, in the classic sense, approach to this topic, who's saying, okay, let's assume probably 90% of what's out there is either a scam or just a bad idea. But let's also assume that some of it is maybe important and worth paying attention to. Like, where does that leave us? And what are the methods we use to evaluate and decide what makes sense and what doesn't? I go to these podcasts that have like 150 episodes. Every week they're talking about this space. And I'll Control F search for like scam or rug pull, and there's nothing. They've recorded 100 hours of conversation and never once mentioned a scam. That seems kind of disingenuous. So I'm kind of trying to psych myself up to be the one who does that, I guess. And that's like Meta, the whole do a daily vlog thing. I almost didn't do it today because I didn't think I had much to say, but look at me go. And it gives me a space to kind of like commit a little more, like just a bit more deeply to stuff that otherwise would have just been kind of like fluttering around in my head. So no commitment yet, but we'll see.